I realized I haven't reviewed too many books this year because with the first half of the year I was moving out of my house, and then the second half of the year I'm looking for a place to live because my plan has fallen through, the backup plan has fallen through, and the backup plan has fallen through, so now we're just winging it, and that is not something you want to do when looking for a place to live. If you have watched my previous videos when I was telling you what books I was taking with me on the move, I packed up all of my physical books except for A Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin, and that is not a book you want to read when angry with relatives. So the book I ended up picking up to read in place of A Clash of Kings was W.A.R.P. Book 1, The Reluctant Assassin by Eoin Colfer, who is the writer of the Artemis Fowl series, and I did say at the start of the year that I wanted to read more books by Eoin Colfer because he is the author of one of my favorite series, but I don't know if he's actually one of my favorite authors because I've only ever read the Artemis Fowl series, and you can't decide whether or not you like an author based on one series because that could just be a fluke. You know, they write something you like and other things you don't. I mean, we all have authors that we like one thing of and not another thing of. Like, Stephanie Meyer. I really like The Host. Really didn't like Twilight. So, that is what this is. Because the wish list is still packed up in my moving stuff, I decided to go for this. In part because I didn't want to get a book that I had in another format, be it ebook or audiobook, or a book that I had been reading from the library. I didn't want to get like a middle book in a series because then I'd feel like obligated. Like, if I get the first book in a series, I don't have to buy it. If I get a book in the middle of a series, then I feel like I have to buy at least all the books prior to that. Because I don't feel bad about stopping a series midway, but I feel bad about starting a series midway. Colfer. And they actually had quite a bit of them, which is why I noticed that. And, names that you recognize. So, I will now review. Oh, is this my first review of the year? This might be my first review of the year, which is kind of sad for August. I mean, if you look on if you follow me on Goodreads, then you've been following me. I have read about 127 books, but those were mostly manga, and the first book in the W.A.R.P. series is The Reluctant Assassin, and this book takes place in two settings, modern London and Victorian London. You have the main character, Chevy Savano, who is an American who is shipped to London for reasons that can get explained in the book, and she is, basically her job is to stay in the house and watch and hang out with the scientist dude who is gardening a secret government project. And in the Victorian timeline, Riley is with his mentor, who he doesn't really like, who happens to be an assassin, and his job is to assassinate this dude who happens to be from the future. And as a result of the murder that takes place, Riley is thrown into the future where he meets up with Chevy, and they are basically forced to run for their lives. As far as the characters go, the two main protagonists are Chevy Savano and Riley, no first name given. And while I enjoyed them as characters, I enjoyed Riley's character more because he was more adaptable and less stubborn than Chevy. There was just a little something missing from them. I don't know what it was. I want to say it's charisma. I think it's because at the same time I was reading a manga that's actually set in Victorian London, known as Black Butler, and those characters, they're more dynamic, I felt, than Chevy and Riley, and I think it's just because of the similar settings that, this series kind of was less compelling than that. I want to say that's why, but it could also be because of the Artemis Fowl series, which was written by Eoin Colfer, which I've said 4 times now. and I think I could have been subconsciously comparing them, because in the first book of the Artemis Fowl series, Artemis starts out as a villain, so he's the protagonist and a villain, which is an unusual mix. These characters, Riley and Chevy, are actually good guys. The villain, Garrick, the main villain, he is he's much more scary as a concept villain than an actual villain. If this had been like a YA novel, like an upper YA novel, or a novel, adult novel, new adult novel, something like there, he would have been a lot scarier, because they wouldn't have held back on like the things he actually did, because basically in the story they basically implied that he is an assassin who killed Jack the Ripper, and I mean, conceptually that is really scary, but it was just kind of and when you find out about that, like, the characters are scared, like, oh my god, but it's dealt with so displaced from the actual story, like, from like the actual incident, that it's just so distant. There was no real emotion involved in that. And I think, again, it was because this is geared towards a younger audience, the age of like the Artemis Fowl audience, where you can't get into this stuff. And I mean, for that purpose, for that age, he's actually a very scary villain. But for the purposes of his concept, like, I wanted more, because conceptually he's just so scary. And the fact that they can't go as in depth as the concept of the character will allow, it is, like I said, and I think the series has had a slight disadvantage, because one, it has to compete with I have to like compare it to Artemis Fowl, because it's a series, but it's the well-known series versus the new series, and people want to know how they're going to compare. Then at the same time, I was reading Black Butler, which has a similar setting, and when it's really hard to distinguish the two, not compare them when you're reading two stories about people in Victorian London and they're both fantasy based. That is a problem, and I feel like there's nothing wrong with this, and Black Butler had an advantage. It was a manga series, so it's geared towards an older audience, and there are pictures, so yeah. I'm trying to, sorry, like, there's not much I can do, because I can't like open a curtain, because it's 1:30 in the morning, so like, this is the best you get, and it's like glowing on my face. Ultimately, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I've been a lot more stringent with stars this year. Like, last year, almost everything I read was a 5 or a 4 star. Pretty much everything I read this year has been solid 4 star. And some things I probably would have given a 4 star. I gave a 3 star. And I think it's just because I'm in such a crappy place right now. Like, I want something that can pull me out of reality. And, because that's what I need to enjoy it, and they're just not doing that. Like, I feel like a lot of these books would have been given 5 stars had I not had so many things to deal with in my real life. Yeah. Sorry, cats. Just scared my cats. I definitely think that this will, like, one of the only reasons I haven't actually gone out and got the second one is, like I said, I'm living in a hotel right now, and books are actually kind of heavy when you have to carry them all up and down stairs. I won't see you, but you will see me next time, although, let's be honest, I really don't know when that is, because I think my last video was like 2 months ago. But until then, TTYL. Oh, now I get good lighting.